Welcome to my new shop. I wanted to make a video telling about my experiences of planning and building this thing over the past few years and really building it and finishing it the past year. I did a lot of research. There's a lot of people on YouTube that share a lot of information that was super helpful for me. Still, with all the research I did, all the people I talked to, there were still a lot of things that I wasn't expecting, wasn't quite prepared for. A little breakdown of what we're going to cover is I want to talk about why I chose to build a shop, what I use this for, what my purposes were. I'm going to do a step-by-step cost breakdown of every single thing that I can remember, that I took notes on. I'm going to share my experiences of things that popped up that I didn't expect. I'm going to talk about things that I would do differently if I were to do this again. If you're just here to see the total cost of the video, maybe just watch the first chapter where I'm going to talk about the details of what exactly this shop is, and then I'll give the total cost in a chapter at the very end. So if you're someone that's also looking to build a shop building, I hope I have some useful information, some tips, some pointers in this video, and otherwise I hope you enjoy the video. What I wanted a shop for is I'm really mechanical. We drive a little bit older vehicles. I do all of my own maintenance, from ball joints, brake jobs, tire rotations, even an occasional engine swap. I also do carpentry work. I love working with my hands. I'm always building stuff, working on stuff, and obviously I've got a couple of these old C10 trucks and I'm building one of those at the moment, so I've always got a project car. Not only that, just having extra space to park things. So those are kind of the obvious reasons a lot of guys like me would want a building like this. But the other thing is, this whole building project was based around this loft space I wanted. That is approximately 28 foot wide by 14 foot deep loft. I essentially wanted to build some sort of a family area. I told my kids when we built the shop, I want us all to spend time out here together. And if they want to be helping me work on stuff, that's great. But if they're not into building cars and that kind of thing, I still want us out here together. We've got TV, surround sound, couch, recliner up there. Just a cool hangout area. This is a 30 by 50, and I have 14-foot walls. The main reason I went with 14-foot walls was I wanted to have the loft space. You can get away with a loft pretty easily with 12-foot walls, especially if you're just using a loft for storage and things like that. Being that I wanted the loft space to be kind of like a living area, I wanted to make sure we had plenty of headspace both under the loft to work and above the loft to not have to be ducking our heads going up and down the stairs or anything. I also decided to do scissor trusses to give me more headroom, mainly up in the loft, but also in the future for adding an automotive lift. Both having 14-foot walls and scissor trusses just gives me a ton more headroom. If for some reason I found a good deal on a lift that was taller than your average 12-foot one, I still have room to do that. I have two 12-foot wide by 10-foot tall garage doors. I've got three small medium windows under my porch on one side. I also have a 10-foot by 50-foot covered concrete porch on the side over here. We knew we wanted to have some sort of porch on here. My wife has always wanted bigger porches. Our house doesn't have great porches on it, so that's kind of a little bit her baby, and it's also a nice place if you're out on the four-wheeler or something and it starts raining, you can just drive up onto the porch real quick and get dry. I decided I wanted to run water to my shop. All my buddies that have shops, that's one thing all of them have said is a lot of them regret not having any water. Just having a place to go wash your hands is completely worth it. My county was super strict as far as water. Any water that came into the building, even if it were just used as gray water to wash your hands, has to be drained to my septic. We chose to do the two-tone metal. The two-tone on the bottom was a little bit of an upgrade. Not a ton of money. One thing several people told me was to do soffits. So we do have a 1-foot overhang all the way around the building. It just makes it look a little bit better than looking like a giant metal shed. This is a post frame, so there are 6 by 6 posts every 8 feet, almost 4 foot into the ground. My trusses are 4 foot apart, and those scissor trusses were a little bit of an upgrade. I was only going to do scissor trusses over the loft area, but it really wasn't that much more cost, and it simplified things to keep them all the same. So first of all, when you get ready to build a shop, you're going to have to get a permit. My local county, they're super strict on a lot of things, but my permit was $200. The permit here is based on different details. Obviously, one for the actual building. It was a separate amount for the electric, separate amount for the sewage. Next, it came time to prepare a pad. My property is fairly level already, but my entire property kind of has a downhill slope. We picked out an area that is pretty flat. I was still really surprised at how much dirt work had to be done and the cost of all that just to get a pad prepared. We used my wife's uncle, so he gave us a really fair deal. He went ahead and started by scraping off the old topsoil just to get a nice fresh surface to start on. And then I want to say we hauled in somewhere between 4 and 7 loads of clay. I don't remember for sure, but he's the one that also did the trenching. So I had to trench from my well house, which was about 70 foot away, something like that. So my electric, my well house were kind of coming from the same part of my property. So between that trench and then I had to go another trench for the drain for my water for my sink, that ended up being like another 50 or 60 feet. All the dirt work, including the backhoe, the loads of dirt, the loads of clay, doing all the trenching, getting the ground open and ready, was $3,253. After I had everything in the ground and had to throw dirt back over it, it was in the middle of winter. There's no way I could do it with a shovel. Everything was rock hard. Ended up spending another $1,890. One other thing, as far as electrical and plumbing, I chose to trench all of that in the ground. The electrical is in conduit, and I brought it up through the pad. I chose to do that just so I didn't have to attach anything on the outside and put holes in the side of my building. Purely cosmetic, but just keeps everything looking nice. I also have 2 walk-through doors. All of those details were included in my building. The garage door openers, those were not included. They were just manual doors when the guys walked away. I chose to pay a contractor to build the building itself. I have a lot of rock around here. Just the fact that they have machines to dig those holes almost 4 foot in the ground was worth it to me. My building is a little more expensive than like the kits you would get at like a big box store, Menards, Lowe's. The contractor I hired to build my building, they used 29 gauge metal for everything. Total price on the entire building, this includes the structure, the wood, the metal, the garage doors, the doors, the windows, the porch, all of that structure included for the building itself, $37,757. That also includes the labor to put the building up. I want to say, without looking at the invoice, the labor was around $5,500. The concrete slab, it is a 4-inch slab, 30 by 50, and then obviously the porch is another 10 by 50. So you could say the slab altogether is a 40 by 50 slab. That was $13,000, labor included. The other thing that I added to that is I didn't know exactly where my lift was gonna go, but I had an idea. So I have about a 12 foot by 15 foot area that is another 2 inches deeper, a minimum of 2 inches. So, you know, that's 6 to 7 inch concrete over there, which was, I think, $300 or $400 extra, but well worth it, in my opinion. I chose to get the nicer jack shaft style garage door openers. Those are quite a bit more expensive than you have to get, but I paid $951 total for both of them. So once everything was built and done, I had to bring more gravel for my driveway. Ended up spending $839 on driveway gravel. I then had to bring in 3 more loads of topsoil just to build up to the edges of my building, and then hire a guy with a skid steer to come in and spread that out real nice just to finish it off and be able to put some grass seed down. The topsoil itself for 3 loads was $780. The guy I hired to come finish off my driveway and spread the topsoil, I paid him $360. Once we got our first rain, it became obvious pretty quick that adding all of this roof where it didn't used to exist, we were going to have a water drainage issue. So we were kind of panicked because we just spent all this money getting topsoil out and we didn't want it all washing away. So we ended up making the decision to have gutters put on all around. We ended up paying $1,700 for gutters. So as far as wiring to the shop, that was a big surprise. I had no idea how much just the wire itself, the material, was going to cost to bring electric to my shop. For the distance I had to run to put in 125 amp service, I had to run 2-aught wiring, and that ended up being $836.01 just for that strand of wire. The 125 amp breaker itself was $85. I could have put direct burial wire directly into the trench, but around here we have a lot of rock, and I didn't really want to chance that, so we ended up putting everything in conduit. I ended up spending $550 just in conduit, elbows, couplings, all that stuff. I paid a buddy of mine who was a master electrician to come out and help me for a day. We ran everything. I ended up paying him $300 to help me get electric to the building. So I ran PEX all the way from my well house over. I put them in the same trench as the electric. I ended up spending $300 in PEX, fittings, all that stuff to get water in here. I spent $160 on a cheap wash sink and faucet kit. Ended up spending $600 in plumbing just for the drain side of things. Included with the building price was the double bubble wrap that they put around it, which kind of helps keep it airtight. Also works as a moisture barrier. I knew that I would love to do spray foam insulation at some point if I could afford it. And the guys that I talked to that do spray foam highly recommended doing the double bubble wrap. For one, to give an extra moisture barrier, but for two, if you ever have to remove any metal off the side of the building, that keeps your foam separated from the metal. So essentially you can replace a piece of metal and not lose all of that foam insulation with it. I also had an additional $120, which is just a lot of miscellaneous plumbing junk I had to run and grab here and there. I ran all of my electrical myself inside. Like I said, my electrician buddy, I hired him to help me get service to the building, and he installed 2 outlets for me. I then went back, ran all my wiring internally, added all my outlets, added all my lights in the ceiling, all my switches, did all that myself. These lights I got were from Amazon. It was a 12-pack of 8-foot LED strip lights. Those were about $250. I didn't keep track of what I spent as far as electrical stuff, wiring the inside of the building. The outlet switches probably spent around $350, just a guesstimate on that. Once I had lights and electric and the whole building was up, everything was pretty much good to go. I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on the spray foam insulation. This is open cell, and it is 3.5 inches of open cell is what I paid for, and that was $6,200. But they came out here, they were done in about 6 hours, I want to say. It is one thing I definitely do not regret spending the money on. On average, on days that the temperature fluctuates a lot, this shop will stay around 15 degrees cooler on a hot day than outside, and 15 degrees warmer than outside on a cold day. If I did my math correctly, the grand total is $70,482.61. Now, I wanted to break it down into as much details as I could remember and made notes on along the way, mainly just because not everyone is going to want the same things. There are lots of things you can do to save money in this process, so your building may not cost near as much. Well, this is the part of the video that I talk about some of the things I learned along the way. Even with all the research I did, talking to other buddies that have shops and have done it, there were still some things that I would do differently. One of the biggest things I would do differently is I would have gone back when they first built it and either paid them to have studs at least every 2 feet instead of having something every 4 foot. When I went and put all this barn tin, it was definitely tricky because I didn't think about not having that extra structure back behind. Not a big deal, but I had to go in with some 2x4s and kind of add some structure here and there. that would have made that way more easy, and it would just be nice in general to have more studs to be able to tap into. My suggestion is, if you're building a building, go look at some other buildings, step inside, think about what you're doing, because when you have an empty space, it looks really huge. One thing I would have loved to have done is gone 10 foot wider and 10 foot longer. They say the same thing about tattoos. Figure out what size you want and then go a little bit bigger. At the end of the day, you got to write a check. You got to have a ceiling at some point. This space is great, but when you start getting several cars in here, it fills up super quick. But the thing is, I've got 2 old trucks that I'm building into one. I'm getting ready to pull my other one completely off the frame. Once you have everything off the frame, that takes up a lot of space. But once those trucks are finished and I have one complete truck, I keep things clean and organized. It's going to be perfectly fine. We wanted to pay this place off as soon as possible. That was one of our goals. So if I could keep the building a little smaller, that still did everything I wanted, and pay it off quickly, that was a big priority for me. Another small regret was after I ran all of my electrical, I kind of got in a hurry. I wanted to get things finished, and we went ahead and pulled the trigger on the spray foam insulation. I still want to add some lights over the eave, over my garage doors on the end for the outside. Also want to add some outside outlets, and I wish I would have not gotten such a hurry and made sure that all of my electrical, all my lights, all of that stuff that I wanted to do was done before I went ahead and did the spray foam. When I was planning everything just kind of came together so quick, I almost didn't have enough time to run my electric. Well, now I have to figure out a little bit different ways to route things around. I've got to cut some foam out to add some accessories at this point. Would have been a lot easier to do that before. So take your time, make sure you've got everything in place that you want before you go back and insulate over it or do something that's going to make your job harder. This isn't really something that I regret necessarily or that I would do differently, but one thing I've noticed, my building is super watertight, and that's great, but at the bottom corners of my garage doors, when it rains, especially when it rains hard, I do have water that leaks in around the edges. I have siliconed all the edges of my building that I can, all the seals, everything around the garage door, and still somehow water drains in. And if it's going to rain really hard for several days, I'll put a towel over on the corners just so it doesn't run around the edges. If you guys have any suggestions on how to better seal that, let me know. I know some concrete guys will actually cut down a little bit to where you have to drive over a little bit of a hump to get in and out. My concrete does turn down, but it still gets water in, so that's kind of annoying. So as far as future plans go for the shop, one thing I would like to do is go back and add OSB all the way around the shop above the metal and go all the way up to the ceiling. I think I'll leave the ceiling open, but having OSB the rest of the way up would be really nice. I am going to build in some shelving. I want to take advantage of these 14-foot walls and really build some tall shelving so I can stack car parts and whatnot, just have a lot more storage. And then workbenches. Back there where that 66 is sitting under the loft, up against that wall possibly, I want to build out some nice workbenches. Other than that, I'm just looking forward to making memories out here with my family and building some cool stuff. I've got my lift in here now as of about a month and a half ago. Having a 2-post lift in here has just been a game changer. Whether the weather's good or bad, it's so nice to have a space to pull in, put stuff on the lift. It's just so nice to have a space like this. As far as the loft goes, especially my son and I are out here all the time. It is like the coolest man cave. We're out here playing Xbox, watching movies. I mean, we love it. To quote my son last week, he said, "The shop is my life." So that solidifies the decision to build this, I think, for me. Building a loft space like that is just a really efficient way to gain more square footage without taking away from your other floor space. That is the breakdown of my shop build. Like I said, there's a lot of great information out there on the internet. I did a ton of research. I have buddies with shops that have been through it. I did everything that I could to plan for this, and there were still some things that snuck up on me as far as some hidden costs, things I wasn't expecting. I hope you found the breakdown of cost as well as giving you the total cost. I hope that helps you have a better idea of what your dream shop space may end up actually costing you. Thanks for watching the video. If I left out any details that you have specific questions about, feel free to comment down in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get back to answering those. Thanks for watching.